Yeah, it's best to start recording early because folk like you and I, we do all the really interesting stuff either before we start recording
Oh, hold on. Let me play
or
my walk-on
afterwards.
music again.
Oh, right, okay. More walk on music.
I like that old school shit like Green Day, you know?
Ah,
No,
yes.
I'm being partially ironic there, but you know.
Yes, yeah, well, I'm in the camp of everything after Dookie is shit. Um,
But
and
American Idiot, good song.
it's a very good song, a very good song. And
Everything else, though, no.
Yeah,
As always, you are correct.
yeah. As always, if you disagree with you, you are right. I am wrong. I love all these little bits and pieces I've picked up from Talking Slayer. And this podcast will be titled "Talking Bollocks, Talking Slayer."
I never made that connection before. Oh my God. I
Really,
stole
as
all
soon
my
as I
best
saw
shit from Howard.
dude, as soon as I saw the title of your podcast, I was like, "You cunt."
Well, yeah, as always, you're correct. So if you think I'm a cunt, I will take that. Apologies to your viewers. I just worked out. So I'm sweating like a pig. I spent the whole last year podcasting and being very prepared and very written and very orchestrated. So I
Yeah,
thought today I would not do that. I thought I would just come to you hot and see what I can say off the top of my dome. And either
yeah.
people can look at the stuff I've been doing for the last year and say, that's terrible. You should do more of this. Or people can watch this and say, what the fuck were you doing? This is better.
Well, you see, the thing is, I appreciate what a tough gig it is for you flying by the seat of your pants because it's like that's where I live. That's stand up, being on stage. Yeah, anything can happen at any minute, and you've got to be able to deal with it. Whereas being a journalist, being a writer, it's about being methodical, about preparedness, about being thorough, about actually being prepared for everything before it happens. Um, and and I've often said this to people like yourself. The attention to detail, the skill, the background research, all of that stuff that you do um, amazes me as much as I'm sure it amazes you that other people are able to just go out there and just fly by the seat of their pants and wing
Yeah,
it.
people that can
I,
perform
I,
live and improv, that shit's a superpower. I wish I could do that.
yeah, but no, but the thing is, what I'm saying is, I disagree. I think it is. I think also the opposite is true. The opposite is a superpower. Ask me to sit down and write a 1,500 word article that is thoroughly researched and properly written, and I will tell you to go fuck yourself because I can't.
You know,
Yeah,
I say all the time, like when I'm writing and when I'm spending 3 hours trying to track down one little fact and find out if it was A or B, or if
yeah,
it was September 12th, 2013, or if it was January 11th, 2012. When I'm in the middle of that process, I always say, like, Jesus, these facts are fucking hard to work with. I see why so few music writers do it.
yeah.
And that's my shot at most of the rest of the music writing community. Facts are hard. It's easy to sit down and write about what you think and what your opinion is, but finding out where what exactly what the actual release date of Hell Awaits was in 1985. Was it March or was it August or was it September? That's a deceptively complex and difficult and rigorous test.
Yeah, but not for me, because when I'm writing that article, I just go to Wikipedia and whatever that says, well, there you go. There's my
1985,
facts.
that's good enough.
Yep, done my research. I checked Wikipedia.
Well, nobody's keeping track. As I say, friends don't keep track of things, but I think that you have been kindly welcoming me to your show for 10 years now, I want to
Ah,
say.
it's scary. You
Yeah,
you were
that
you were
can't be
like you were
right. I
an
think I
early
made a
guest.
mistake there. So we'll say four.
No, I think it was
But as
I think
always, I appreciate you having me. Thank you to all the UK listeners. Thank you to everybody that gives a shit. You do a good show. I listen to it. It's good.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, as you know, you know, I was a patron of yours as well as a subscriber, and I really enjoyed the show. I enjoyed how it was put together. I enjoyed how you stuck to your guns and thanked everybody in the world at the beginning and the end of the show, every episode. Um, that was
I
that's
believe in that.
yeah,
If you help
absolutely.
me,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah. But
appreciate that. I
that's
don't take it for granted.
yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I always used to listen just to hear you say my name again. See if I made the shortlist this week in this episode. But no, I really enjoyed it, and I also thought it was really good and interesting idea doing one free episode. You know, like you basically, if you don't pay me, you get half the deal. You get
Yeah,
half.
that's the
You
setup
get
for the
half
show
the story.
was Talkin Slayer. The formal title is Talkin Slayer, a metal podcast and half-assed audiobook.
Loved it.
So what I did with it was I've written two books about Slayer. One is just about Rain and Blood, and one is a full biography of the band, who, when I started, was not an active band and had broken up and were going to stay broken up forever. And by the time I was done, that was no longer the choice. But what I did was, if you were a Patreon supporter and you kicked in just a little bit of money, you could get every episode every single week. And if you just wanted to listen for free, then every other week you got an
Yeah,
episode and you missed half of them. And I don't
yeah.
know how you could follow the story going just every other episode, but a lot of people did it. So
I I
thanks for listening.
I I mean, I get that people would do that, but also from my point of view, it's like, really, Slayer? You just want every other episode? It's like, who the fuck is just like, Slayer? Yeah, I'm mildly interested in them. It's like, no, no, no. You are either balls in or a virgin. You know,
Yeah,
it's like that. There's no halfway. You know, it's
yeah,
either
that's what
fucking Slayer or you're not fucking Slayer.
yeah, DJ Will, one of the luminaries of the Will Howell from radio station in America, KNAC, the DJ on that metal show, uh, does so many things. I interviewed him as one of the many witnesses for the scene, as it happened. He's a former Metal Blade staffer too, very connected to Slayer. He said that there's no partial Slayer fan. There's nobody that was
Yeah,
into them for a couple years. You're into them for life or you're not. There used to
yeah,
be all these, or there still are, crazy fires in California. And if you were a Slayer fan and Slayer were playing a show, you drive through the fire to go see them. And
that's
even if that's
nice.
not literally true, that's how Slayer fans generally regard the band. We've been there
Yeah.
since the 80s and we're still here.
Well, funnily enough, one of the few Rob Zombie, one of the few things that I've got the time of day for Rob Zombie ever doing is actually an interview. Obviously, not his music or his movies. I've got taste, but you know, so sorry, Rob. Women in cages on stage, yeah, that shit doesn't fly anymore, mate. Um, I remember him being interviewed, and I think it's on one of the it might be on the documentary on War at the Warfield. It's on one of the docs, and he's there and he goes, yeah, I've never met anybody who's into Slayer for like a summer. You know, it's like you're either into those guys for life or you're not. And I just thought, yeah, do you know what? He's got a real good fucking point there.
Yeah. So this being the Slayer show post mortem, because where we are in the show is that I'm done reading the book. I'm almost done putting together the audio book, which has taken up a frightening amount of time and effort, even though I already recorded most of it. But now it's done. So I'm going to be doing season two, and that's just going to be reruns. But the way that I'm very short with my intro at the beginning, it's going to be even shorter, and it's just going to drop into the chapters, and it'll be the same deal.
Right.
You can get the same every other episode for free. But some people missed it the first time. I was just so
Yeah.
fucking busy making the thing that I didn't get to promote it. A bunch of things changed in the media landscape between the time that I started making it and the time that I finished it. I had a bunch of podcast appearances lined up that fell through. So it's the story with everything I do. I just get so busy making the thing, and that's where I want to spend all my time. I don't spend nearly enough time promoting it and pushing it and selling it and going on metal
They
shows and acting like I'm some kind of special fucking angel because I listen to the same shit that you do and ooh, look at me.
But there you go. You see, dude,
Yeah,
you're an artist. You need a manager. You need an agent. You need somebody looking after you,
I
who's
need a
who's
good
doing
week
all
of
of that
sleep
promo
is what I
stuff.
need, or an extra day a week. But yeah, a manager would probably not hurt. But so this is the Slayer book post mortem. So I want to use some of this as therapy a little bit and just talk about it and see how you like it
Yeah.
and
Well,
what your thoughts.
I'm keen to find out. I mean, that was the kind of nature of why I approached you to do this in the first place was because I've listened to every show, and I've listened to it from my point of view, and then I've listened to it from your point of view as well. And I've kind of put myself in your shoes coming to it. I know there was you had a lot of like just technical bullshit going on at first with Patreon and
Yeah.
uh, and all the rest of it. But it all worked out in the end. You
Yeah, we
got
got
there
a
in the
show out
end.
every week. I'm really proud of that. I never missed a week. I have no idea how I did that looking back, but
Yeah,
even when the computer crashed and burned, we still got it done.
yeah, and the thing is, it was a completely new adventure for you. Um, how did you come up with the idea in the first place, and how long did it take you from having the idea to actually kind of like actioning it?
Man, it's one of those many things that I was going to do before the pandemic. I'd been thinking about doing it forever, and then the pandemic happened, and it was 3 years later, all of a sudden. So that pushed it
Yeah,
back a little bit. I wish I could remember the moment that I thought to call it Talkin Slayer, because that probably would have been the big lightning bolt. That, of course, being a play on the legend, fucking Slayer,
yeah,
the profession of faith for Slayer fans. So it's something that was on the drawing board for at least 5 years. And like so many aspects of the Slayer book and books that I've written, it just happens on its own time. And I feel like when the universe opens up and lets it happen, like I push and I push and I push and I try to make it happen and I try to make it happen, but only when the divine or infernal forces that be decide it's going to happen, then it'll happen. So I was pushing to make it happen for 5 years off and on. I just couldn't get started. Pandemic happened, this happened, that happened. Then all of a sudden, the 10th anniversary of Jeff's death was coming up. Jeff Hanneman, the guy that the late great Slayer co-founder, guitarist, the guy who wrote most of their stuff, their best stuff, the real pure artist of the group. We were coming up on the 10th anniversary of his death, and all of a sudden it was like the road cleared and everything parted, and the universe said, okay, go, you can do it now. So we got the first episodes out right in time for his the 10th anniversary of his death, and then it rolled. And I mean, if I would have done it a year earlier when I was done, Slayer would have been an inactive band. They would have been a legend. They would have been broken up still.
yeah.
And as it happened, right when we were finishing the show up, coming to the end, Slayer all of a sudden made the comeback that, on one hand, you could see coming because everybody comes back, but on the other hand, Slayer looked like they were going to be the one band ever that retired and meant it.
It was the
And that was
fucked
not
up
the
timing
case.
of it, but it was the fucked up timing of it as well, wasn't it? Because it was like Kerry King announces the album's coming out, here's some shows, and then we get literally the following week, oh, Slayer are coming back. Hey,
Yeah,
has anyone told Kerry? Does Kerry know?
so many things about what is going on in the world of Slayer right now are baffling. So I felt like I was perfectly positioned to catch that wave and comment on it because I had been talking Slayer band
Yeah,
for a year, and all of a sudden Slayer returns right at the same time as Kerry King's album, and Kerry's saying a lot of things that don't add up, and it's weird and it's confusing, and
yeah. I don't
what the
wish
fuck goes
Tom
on in that
dead.
Slayer
Well,
world?
hang on. You're doing gigs with him, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah, make your fucking mind up. What's going on with you? That's Mr. Passive Aggressive, you know?
Yeah, and if you haven't been following this story quickly, Kerry King has been talking about his new band since Slayer broke up 5 years ago, and he keeps saying it's ready, it's close. Slayer, they broke up, they're going to stay broken up, and then Kerry finally has the album ready, and he gives Rolling Stone this big interview. He says, "Well, I don't, as you
Yeah.
said, I don't wish Tom dead, and Dave Lombardo's dead to me, and I haven't talked to Tom since the band broke up, and." just made it clear. And this is not like, he's talking to some rag or somebody caught him in a coffee shop. This is him doing a very formal interview with Rolling Stone. And he makes it clear that Slayer is never going to fucking play again. And then a week
Yeah.
later, Slayer's back.
Yeah.
And Carrie's saying things like, yeah, I sort of maybe knew. And, dovetailing in with his solo band, he's saying things like, yeah, I don't like the name of it. I wish we could have called it something else. Really, Carrie? Like,
Now I'm
maybe you're
going to
not a
take you
person
to
who has some influence in the band, or is maybe somebody who's a shot caller.
yeah, well, I'm gonna take you to task over that because he has since explained. Right, firstly, okay, I believe him. I genuinely believe him, but I don't. As always, right? It's like you get a little bit of the truth, and if you get a little bit of the truth, you get away with a lot of the lie. And the lie will be, look, Kerry. Even if it, and Kerry might not even know this, right? So, Kerry, if you're listening, sorry, this is new to you, right? Um, I think personally that King's Reign, yeah, I want that name. And the lawyer came back and said, oh, we can't do it. And but surely if it's some little company coming, no, it's really complicated. I reckon that's management going to the lawyer, just whatever name he comes up with, tell him he can't fucking have it, right? I don't care what you do. Make up someone else somewhere's copyrighted it. No, you can't have it, right? Because the only brand that he has got is Kerry King. Kerry King's coming to town. People will buy some tickets. King's Reign, who the fuck are they? Never heard of them. Yeah.
That's what I surmise. I think, and I do believe ultimately, I don't think he really was the decision maker there. I think it was maybe his label or his agents or this whole cabal, as you're saying, of the people behind him, whose job it is to sell him and get him money and get him in places. I think they said, listen, you got to be Kerry King. You can't be Totschlager or something,
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. And the thing is that as with all these things, we'll never know. But I don't know. He's never, I don't know, he's never struck me as the kind of guy that goes like, I'm Slayer, I do everything. It's like that, that sort of came out incrementally over the years. And sort of, if there's ego behind it, he wants everybody to know I'm tracking everything, by the way, guys. Yeah. I'm doing the bass. I'm doing all the fucking work here. I'm doing all the heavy lifting. We may as well call this Kerry Slayer. But he kept his own counsel. That stuff leaked out over the years. But the other elements, yeah, I agree with you. I mean,
my larger point is it's just a weird story, and that's how things are in Slayer world. They don't operate like most people do, and they're not like
absolutely
most people, and that's why we're interested in them.
Yeah, and but also why? I mean, I've talked about this on the podcast, but I'm gonna raise it again, which is this whole like Slayer are playing some shows, and the the needless wives get involved because they've got the arse because some people think it's a bad idea for Slayer to come back, and then
when you're quoting Gary Holt's wife and that's making headlines, all respect to her.
Well, but the thing is, when the story is that, when the story is, hey, do you know what? 500 words on if you don't want to go, then don't go. Nobody cares. Well, you clearly do. You've got 500 words here that say that you are invested in people saying that they don't want to go. But my favorite part of all of this is, unbeknownst to Tom's wife, her long statement about basically reads like, look, I've been working on this for the last 5 years. He won't get out the fucking house. He's doing nothing. He used to go away. He's now here all the time. Have you any idea how annoying this is for me? I mean, this was Tom from Slayer, and now it's just Tom. And, please welcome him to some gigs. Please make him want to do some more.
Go to Chicago for the weekend, please.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, Tom, have you ever thought of, maybe doing some Slayer shows again? No, not really. Well, I'm telling you, you should. you know, if you want our marriage to survive, he's like, I've just got this idea that, Tom's like, no, but I want to hang out with the kids, and they're like, yeah, but you missed those years, and they don't want to fucking hang out with you all the time, you know. So, can you just like do something Slayerish, please?
Yeah, it's a multifaceted story.
Yeah, it is. But
And the money
so
ain't bad, I'm guessing too.
well, I mean, and the thing is as well is they said they'd never tour again. They're not going to tour. They're clearly
Yeah.
just going to do. They're going to do.
Yeah, and
To
that's
get
part of what we
Tom.
break down in the book and in the podcast is what they actually said when.
Yes, yeah, no,
Slayer never called it a farewell tour.
but that's
Opening
that's what.
bands that were
Yeah.
working for them that were quoted in a press release that the band's organization wrote called it a farewell tour. But
Now,
Slayer,
you see, firstly, that is what I loved about the podcast. What I loved was the way that you track back and you go through every fucking press statement and you pull it apart and go, so when members of Slayer say this, they are right. That was never said. And that it's that attention to detail that I'm totally incapable of, and so listening to it and that amount of research I absolutely love. I also love the fact that you're although not media trained, you're able to keep just reminding everybody that we are talking about Talking Slayer here, and you've really missed out, and you do need to get back to it if you haven't got to it already. um, so Kerry King's I'm going to finish off the Kerry King section.
hey, listeners, I know we're talking about three different things right here, but
Yeah, we'll
that's why
get
it's a
there.
good story.
It's also it's what if people don't know how this show goes after 10 years, then do you know what? You're listening to the wrong show. Um, so the Kerry King album, right? I listened to your review and I agreed with some of it. I didn't agree
I
with some
have
of
the
it.
short version here. Let me recap it real quick. I said this in like 200 words, maybe. After like 2 months, like I still found myself reaching for it some, and every time Slayer drop a record, I'm on the record saying, you know, new music is exciting. Everybody gets excited and we say it's the best since the real the real statement of value is how much we're listening to it 6 months and a year later. So
Totally
I'm
agree.
still listening to it. I think it's a good summertime listening record, which is probably slightly different in America. It's sunny, it's hot, spend a lot of time in our cars. It's good to cruise around to.
Yeah,
I
I
use
like to
this.
cruise around in my car too. It's just I've got my windows up and my windscreen wipers on.
So I think in American baseball, when you go to swing and try to hit the ball, if you can go 3 for 10, maybe hit 250, 2.5 times out of every 10 times that you go to bat, if you can do that consistently, that's a Hall of Fame career. In baseball, you mostly miss. Even the greatest people that ever played the game, you mostly miss when you hit. And I think art is like that ultimately. Yeah, we like classic albums that are no skips, but the whole record industry is based on an entire album with one or two, maybe three good songs.
Yeah.
And I think the Kerry King album has a lot of flaws, but it has three and a half, four good songs. And by my math, Kerry King is hitting 308, and that's about as good as you can get,
Yeah,
especially off
that's
the
Metal Hall
knees.
of Fame.
Yeah, so that's my take on it, real quick. So I'm sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt
No,
you,
no,
but
no, no. No, I like that because I think no matter what the art is, you judge the artist on the body of work. Look at their body of work. And you judge them on that. Now, some people say like, okay, let's take two very different artists. Well, not very different, but you'll get my meaning. Let's look at Metallica. Let's look at Megadeth, and let's look at the bodies of work. Well, some would say, yeah, look at the volume, look at the output that Mustaine has managed over those years, and look at compared to Metallica. I mean, he's on nearly double the albums. It's like, yeah, True, but then do you break it down to, the quality of the songs over those? Has he got as many good songs across all those albums as they have across there? And people argue about this shit, and some people say, look, if you are constantly creating, you are more worthy of an artist, and others will say no, it's just that old argument, quality versus quantity. And some people go for quantity and some people go for quality, and some people will
Yeah,
say,
and which is better, someone that keeps making the same album over and over, which some people want, and people that want new stuff which is better. I mean, they're
yeah, yeah,
different kind of
exactly.
fans.
Yeah, exactly. But for me, the failing of the album for me is that I like it when I'm listening to it, but I don't remember to listen to it. And every time I play it, I go, "It's a really good album." And then before I know it, it's 3 weeks later, and I go, "Oh, I know what I haven't listened to." And then I listen to it again and go, "This is a really good album." And then a month part, and I'm like, "Yeah, you know."
Do you, as an artist, as somebody who is, very much in the same line of work that Kerry King is, do you feel like we're listening to the first draft of all those songs? Do you
I,
feel like he really sat down and wrote and rewrote and worked on them?
I think there's something quite telling on the credits of the album that Boss Stuff is credited like it's all songs arranged by Kerry King and Paul Bostaff. So I think that is, that's as close as anyone's getting to a writing credit on Kerry King's solo album. So I think from that point of view, yes, arrangement, I think they've been, you know, worked to bits. But I don't know what the Bostaff King dynamic is like, but I don't I think Paul was given like, here are the riffs that are the song. Now we'll arrange it. I don't think Bostoff's turning around at any point and going, are you sure about this riff? Do you know what I mean? Do you think like maybe a little bit of a flourish at the end there, or maybe just clip it a bit? And I think at that point, Bostaff gets a Paddington hard stare from Kerry King. He uses the power of no words, pretends he never heard it, and just carries on.
Yeah, I don't feel like anybody has ever said to Kerry King, like, well, not since Jeff, I don't think anybody has ever looked at him recently and said that's not good enough. It needs a little more. Can you do better? Including Kerry King. Yeah,
Yeah,
again, my orientation is somebody who is interested in performance and team performance and group dynamics, and what it takes to accomplish and achieve. Um, what does it take to do well? And I don't think Kerry has anybody telling him you got to do better. I don't think anybody is telling him like push yourself a little bit.
yeah. I think that's probably true. But to pick up on something else you mentioned about Kerry King saying, like, this is the first time, this is as close as I've actually got to my live guitar tone. And you went down one avenue regards that, saying like, well, why is it taking this long? Why are you using these substandard people if that's not where you've got to? Whereas I went the other route, which is, yes, there's a reason for that, Kerry. That's because producers have always talked you out of it, because it is your live tone. This is the studio. We require a different thing. And even in Slayer, when he was calling a lot of the shots, you're still in a band. Other people still have a say whether you like it or not. But when it's you, I'm finally going to get that guitar tone I've always wanted. It's like, fuck everybody, get them out of the way. I'm getting my live guitar tone. And I think it's, for me, considering it's a guitarist's first solo album, I'd expect the guitars to be on point, and I don't really think they are. I think they just, I don't know, there's something lacking about that. that
Yeah,
guitar
I
sound.
think there's, I mean, my one of my many general problems with music in general at this point is that I think it sounds bad, all of it. You know, if it's not recorded poorly, it's mastered poorly. And there's
Yes,
this
yeah,
dominant mindset that everything has to sound like everybody else. Like we got to be in the game. And I know you want to do things right and be an artist, but if we don't sound like this, we won't attract the attention of all the people that buy records and read Blabbermouth and go to shows. So we have to sound like that. And we have to be shitty like everybody else so we can do good later. And I think that's a recipe for failure and doom and collapse in pretty much every medium. You know, radio fell apart with people thinking like that. Oh, we need to be like everybody else. We have to do all this bullshit over here so we can occasionally do some good things over there, except nobody really gets to the good things over there because the record you have is the record you made and it sounds shitty and that's all we have.
yeah, yeah. Um, but also, I think there's a certain amount of this has been going on a long time. You know, you're mixing albums for earbuds. You know, you're mixing albums to be you're mixing albums to be played on devices that are meant to do way more than just play music. So you know that we get into a whole kind of audiophile kind of narrative now, which is a tough one to argue in this day and age.
Yeah, and I
Um,
guess that works for most people, but it doesn't work for me.
well, I think
Which is
I
why I'm not a critic anymore. You know, I'm not the person
yeah,
that should be evaluating all this stuff. You know, at a
but to
certain
be
point, I realized like if I don't like any of this stuff, I shouldn't be the one saying it's all bad. That's an old person talking.
yeah,
You know, you don't
yeah,
need my voice. You don't need to hear that from me.
I know exactly what you mean, and but I'm without wanting to hold myself up as a shining example, but then going on to do so anyway. Um, uh, the Acid Rain's comeback album in 2019, The Age of Entitlement, doesn't sound like any record. It sounds like its own. It occupies its completely own space. Now, um, we did that on purpose, and funnily enough, I would say at least 70% of the reviews that I read for that record, the production is being commented on and saying how good it sounds. But it doesn't sound like anybody else. It doesn't sound like anyone else's production because we started out with lofty ambitions. And that was like, Jay said, I want the drums to sound like the Black Album, but everything else to sound like a proper thrash album. And we were like, yep, you've got it. That's exactly what we want to do. And so we just went and did that. And the drums are recorded live. Yeah. Now they're on a grid. You've got to play the game. You've got to, you've got to make sure everything's in time. And so there's no point in throwing the baby out with the bathwater. No, we're going to go old school, and it's going to speed up and slow down like the drummer's pissed. No,
Yeah, I mean, if you got
you
two
know,
months of studio time and a budget for analog tape, then yeah, you can do
yeah,
that. But
yeah, exactly. But you can still do it. You can still create something that will sound different. And then, funnily enough, we did also invest in a fair chunk of money, a fair percentage, to get one of the foremost guys around, Jens Bogren, to master it. And I'm so glad we did. Steve Harris, are you listening? I'm so glad we did because I would say he found another 15% that I didn't know was there. We had the final mix. Normally, final mix, master, they're just going to add depth and width. This guy added so much more, and I was like, wow, and it really was, it was a percentage, but it wasn't a lot of money. Although he is now, so hard luck, everybody. But the point I'm making is, if a shitty little English band who hasn't had an album out for 24 years can spend a little bit of time to make something sound different, but still have the audio quality that puts it up against all of your laptop metal that's coming out, then it can't be that hard. If we can do it, it can't be that hard.
yeah,
You just
exactly.
do it. You've
That's
just got to want to do it.
I often look at the world around me like, either I'm a fucking gorilla and I figured this out, so what's wrong with the rest of you? Or I'm a genius, fucking acknowledge me. But generally, I think like if I can figure this out, if I realize this, if I know this, what are the rest of you doing? Because I don't
Yeah,
think I'm on a different higher level than any of you. What are you doing?
yeah. But
It's like,
I think I also think that there's kind of there's no fun in that, because ultimately that's not something that you're going to go online and put on as a statement and that's going to cause a ruckus or get loads of people commenting on. That's just not how, it's just not how the world works. How the world works is somebody puts their shitty opinion up and then everybody argues. The end.
yeah, and I mean that's online discourse is stupid, which is another reason I don't do it. I don't write for daily sites anymore. I don't regularly do music writing. It's fucking stupid. I mean, Rolling Stone just dropped another list of the greatest guitarists. I think it was Rolling Stone. It's
If it's
some
the
magazine.
it
And
was the one I reposted under the
was
guise of Acid Rain, I'm sure.
was it the one with Taylor Swift at number 8?
Ah, right. No, the Rolling Stone one was I think it had Joni Mitchell at number 8.
Yeah.
And Hetfield and Hammett as one guitarist, and just all sorts of
See,
bullshit.
Carrie and Jeff did that first. They stole that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the idea is to get it wrong. If you write good stuff, I think part of my
Yeah,
problem as an online presence is I don't say things that are really up for debate. I lay out my case and it's straightforward and it's not sensational enough, and there's not a lot for people to comment and go, I think this, I don't think that, I disagree, I don't disagree. Um, there's not enough of that wacky bullshit in what I do that it doesn't create a lot of headlines. Like, here's the story. Okay, that makes sense. I
that's a
agree. There's
great
no controversy.
that's a great observation there. I'm going to steal that off you. The idea is to get it wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're
Put
right.
put
You're right.
your, or maybe it's Ultimate Guitar, I want to say. Nah, I don't
It's,
know. Somebody put Taylor Swift
yeah,
as the number 8
good news,
guitarist.
but good news,
It's a
right? Good news does
magazine that
not
is
sell.
oriented toward rock dudes that are, white rock dudes. And of course, they're going to go, and it has
Yeah,
11,000 comments on it.
yeah, absolutely.
11,000.
Yeah,
I don't have that many listeners to Talkin Slayer, but just by getting it,
don't you?
I'm not a fan of Taylor Swift. My kids are. I like what she represents. I like what she does. I'll take her over Dave Grohl any fucking day. But I mean, the
Well,
idea is you're feeding chum to the sharks so they can go, no, that's a girl. She can't play guitar, rock and roll, fucking Slayer. And it works. It works, and it's stupid, and I
yeah,
don't do it, and that's why I'm not on more podcasts this week. But that's okay. I'm comfortable with that. I'm on
yeah,
the
yeah,
right podcast.
absolutely. Well, also, if you can't if you can't get on them, do one. Yeah, I mean that's what I did, um, and so I mean, getting back to the epic Talking Slayer podcast. And I honestly, I signed up as a patron, and what I haven't said is,
Thank
and
you.
so should everybody else. I know, you, dear listener, you should sign up. And if you only did half, then you need the other half. But you probably figured that out and did it
And the
anyway.
audiobook is coming soon. You will be able to get it at one click if you don't have the patience for that shit. But if you want to support it, we do some cool stuff online. There's a good
Yeah,
community. I miss talking to you guys all the time.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. It is it's actually kind of it's a beautiful thing when you. I mean, I've been doing Patreon for about 7 years now,
And when I
and
say
there's
guys, it is all guys. I
yeah,
point that out. I'm not
same
saying that
same
as a
same
generic.
here.
Please,
Yeah,
some women, non-binary, whoever, come join the conversation. But when I say
yeah.
you guys, it is literally all guys, and I miss you guys.
It is but it is also I find it quite heartwarming to see people from different parts of the world all like chatting away, and you form a community that people then it becomes theirs. It's not yours. It's their community, and it's a beautiful thing. I mean, here's for a start, Nige Savage. Well, I've
The God Nike
well,
Savage.
well, through your podcast, I've had him on my podcast, and I've then ended up doing a live spoken word show down in Bristol, which is his hometown, and staying with his singer and having a brilliant weekend down there. And a great show. Really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, Nige made sure he wasn't in town that particular weekend. But yeah, I mean, that was like that none of that would have happened. Me playing a show in Bristol and all the rest of it. None of that would have happened if it hadn't been for Talkin Slayer. And it's the little things like that. It's the offshoots that sometimes like you don't hear about, you don't realize, you don't know, and it's like then it comes back to you, and you go, "Oh, right, okay."
Yeah, to me, that's what it's about. I'm not playing for all the marbles. I just want to make a couple cool things happen, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But to get back to a point we were talking about earlier, being in the position of recording, I know sometimes you were like you were sort of worried about your voice, or oh, by the way, sounded exactly the same as it always does. Or or anything like that. It's like that is because I do realize that for you putting that performance down, that is a real job of work and focus and editing and and really wanting to get it exactly spot on as it should be, word for word. And that is again, that's not something I could do. That must have been incredibly kind of draining and tiring.
Yeah, I mean, the part of the title is a half-assed audio book, and
Anything but.
backing up. In fact, you mentioned this, and we got off topic. One of my origin points for the book was back before the great Corey Mitchell died. He was writing a book with Phil Anselmo, and I made an offhand comment that grew in my brain. I thought, it would be not funny, like, haha, he's a clown, but it would be awesome to have Phil Anselmo reading his own audio book, but just never editing it at all. Like talking like, oh, and
Yeah.
then in 1989, me and Dimebag Darrell, we went to Texas and we went to see Rigor Mortem. Oh, I'm sorry, fucking Rigor Mortis. You know what I mean? Fucking anyhow, you know what I'm talking about. Let's get
Yeah.
back onto the point. Would you, if there's a fucking dog in here, can you hold on for a
Yeah.
minute?
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
fix this. Hold on. And like that's what I would want from a Phil Anselmo audiobook. I
Yeah,
don't want him.
like a fucked up director's commentary.
Yeah, like I don't want him reading it perfectly. And then in 1989, I formed Pantera with the two brothers and
Yeah.
that kind of shit. So that was the initial idea. I was just going to read the book. And if I fucked up, I was going to back up and leave it in and not edit it. And that immediately went out the window. I just couldn't do that. And I left a couple in there, but yeah, it was exhausting. It took a lot of time. I would most of the episodes I would rehearse them two, sometimes three times. I would
Yeah.
warm up vocally, went on the treadmill for a little bit, listening to rap songs, rapping along with House of Pain and EPMD.
God, I don't do that much. I don't do that much warming up for an Acid Rain show.
Well, I mean, you don't have to. You're in constant practice for it.
Yeah, yeah, okay, I suppose. Yeah,
But
I know what you mean. I like even when I'm not running marathons, I have a level of fitness.
Yeah, you're always
Maintain a
like
level of fit. Yeah,
going.
yeah.
And
I've
I
got you.
haven't been
Yeah,
teaching for a while at this point, so my voice just wasn't in that talking mode. So when you
yeah,
go to read 2 pages after one paragraph of trying to properly enunciate and everything without overpronouncing all your words, all of a sudden you're like, it's difficult. And every week I would say, well, I'm just going to sit down and read the chapter, but you wind up writing a 2-page introduction or a little bit of context. And even just saying, well, here's what happened 3 weeks ago, and here's what happened 2 weeks ago, and here's where we are in the story. That shit takes time. So I tried to half-ass it, to answer your question, and
hmm
I failed in that regard.
yeah,
Maybe I
yeah.
quarter-assed it at best.
Oh well, no, it's funny because yeah, I always love the fact it made me chuckle every episode when you'd be like half-assed audiobook, and I'd be like it totally isn't. It's like this is full on. He is asked. Yeah, it's like but again, I like that, and um, but also for those, I mean, I've first got you on this podcast 8 years ago. Um, we did the legendary round table on Slayer. I mean, if it was me, you, possibly Godless, Joel McIver, all just
Strong dudes.
free forming on our opinions of Slayer. And but the reason I got you on initially is because I as soon as I heard there was going to be a book about Rain in Blood, bought that. As soon as I heard there's a book about the Jeff 66 and 2/3 as it was originally. Right, I'm getting that. And as I've said many times on the podcast, um, the the general perception with Slayer and Dave Lombardo is that Kerry King's an arsehole. He booted Dave out. Tom didn't really have anything to do with it. Poor Dave. And I've said for many years, the truth is out there, folks. I mean, it's in a fucking book. You can read it. What actually happened, and the general perception online, lovely cuddly Dave Lombardo, poor bloke. Yeah. That's just not how it went down,
Yeah, I
It's
mean
just
that's
not.
I went into the project, both the Slayer books thinking, poor Dave Lombardo, best drummer in metal, maybe the best that ever did it metal wise. The other guys are jealous. They pick on him. Poor Dave. He's always getting fucked with. And as I started writing the book, that was my point of view. And by the time I was done with the book, that was not my point of view.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there were some very deliberate, we'll say, inflection points along the way, and you can track that.
Yeah.
Dave does this, Dave does that. And I'm not necessarily saying he's that guy today, but what happened in 1986, what happened in 1991, 92, what happened in 2013, that shit's all there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like it can't be all of the other guys all of the time, because there's only there's only one person that connects all those
Yeah,
incidents.
what's the common denominator to all the
Yes.
problems you have ever had?
Yeah, yeah. And I think, to be fair, one of the best songs on Repentless is "You Against You," and I mean, as direct and base as Kerry King can be with his lyrics, sometimes there are some actually pretty cool lines in there, and it's pretty transparent. But you know, the line about not having any master plan and all the rest of it, it's just like. Yeah, and I remember Kerry being interviewed about it, and he played it like an absolute pro. When somebody was saying, "How do you feel about the whole situation?" He goes, "Do you know what? I feel sorry for Dave. I really do, because he was badly advised. He basically took somebody's advice that he really shouldn't have. He was badly advised to do what he did, knowing full well that he wasn't advised by anybody. That it was completely of his own making. But it was masterfully played, because he came off like, there was genuine sympathy there when there clearly wasn't. He was speaking directly to Dave.
Yeah.
It's like when they say about like sports coaches and like football managers, when they're being interviewed on TV, they're not talking to the viewer, they're not talking to the journalist, they're talking to the dressing room. Yeah, the message is for the dressing room. That's who it's for. It's for the
Yeah.
players. You
Yeah,
know.
it's these little dog whistles that nobody picks up on. And if you know what they're talking about, Kerry doesn't come out and say, fuck you, fuck that guy. But the message
Yeah.
is clearly, fuck him, fuck that guy. He fucked
Yes.
up.
Yeah. Yeah. He's the no. I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, and that's one of the great ironies about Slayer World. I mean, like, it is this group. It exists as this model of people that are communicating like a bunch of successful 20-year-olds, which is to say they're not communicating at all. But
Yeah.
within that, the ways they communicate are fascinating. The way their press agent phrases things, the way they don't talk, the way they do talk, the way they interact. It's there's nothing linear about it, but it's interesting to watch.
It's meticulous. I mean, it's like there's, those press statements when they're announcing the final tour.
Yeah.
Those, they know those press statements are going to be poured over by somebody, probably you, right? That they're going to be poured over by somebody word for word and have them thrown back at them, because that's the world we live in. The internet exists. People will find a group of words that somebody once said and say, well, you said it,
Yeah.
so own it or you're a liar. And
Yeah.
they just made sure that never happened.
And between the guys, apparently Tom and Carrie haven't had an actual conversation for 5 to 10 years. Who knows? This is the
Yeah.
band that has just never sat down and said, I don't appreciate this. And maybe they did when Dave Lombardo and the band parted ways the second time, but I don't know how many conversations there have been between the band members in the past 30 years where they say, this is what I'm thinking, this is how I feel.
I
And
think, I think,
the irony of it is that they probably could have used a coach like Coach Phil from the Metallica, Saint Anger debacle. Um, Rick Rubin probably did have things to offer them, even though he was not working hand in hand with them. They could have used a little bit of mediation and communication,
yeah. Do you
but
know
that's
what?
not them. That's not how they roll.
I know. And also, I think that, I think the only time that members of Slayer have had open, clear communication with each other is every time they talk about kicking Dave out. Yeah, yeah.
You're not wrong.
Or Dave leaves. That's like, yeah,
So
right.
to the Kerry King album, do you think that
Yeah.
in a way do you feel that it is a more cohesive album in that everybody seems to be on the same page? Like I
Um,
never looked at Slayer albums before and thought Tom and Carrie are really doing two different things, but there's a certain unity on Carrie's album that I think is lacking in Repentless. I don't know if it's better overall, but I don't think there are two different people pulling two different ways with two different ideas about how to sing the song. Do you
I
get that
do.
sense?
Yeah, I do think that there seems to be more goal congruity on on
That's why I'm on this show. Phrases like goal congruity.
on the Kerry King album than there is on Repentless. I I I I'm a firm believer that Kerry King is very comfortable with who he is and what he does. So he's hired Phil Demmel to be the other guitarist. So Phil, come in and do that stuff that I've hired you for. He's not going to sit there and go, yeah, I'm not sure I like that. I'm not sure I'm feeling that. It's like, no, no. He also knows that Phil is going to come in. He just knows Phil's going to come in and knock it out the fucking park, which he does much, much to Kerry's demise, frankly, because every time Demmel plays a solo, you just think, oh, Kerry, like, did you not hear any of this and think, I need to up my game? Or shall I get him to do all the solos? And when they trade, you just go, yeah, it's not like the old days, is it, Kerry? It really isn't. You're getting stomped here, you know? Because Jeff was a songwriter. He lead guitarist, yeah, but neither of you greatest guitarists ever. But yeah, I don't saying Demmel is either, but he does a really good job on that album. A really good job. So I do think that he is letting people do their thing. My disappointment, funnily enough, is in my good friend Marcos Agueda's department. Now, rightly or wrongly, I thought Mark as a choice of lead vocalist was absolutely outstanding, spot on, brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, it was right up there with picking Gary Holt. I mean,
Yeah,
there's nobody that can possibly step into these shoes. Who do we get? And they have this brilliant pick that I don't think anybody
yeah.
else would have come up with, and that was the right answer where there was no right answer.
But I stupidly hoped that Mark would go and do the Marcos Agueda thing, and that would expand things, and that would mean we'd hear maybe a bit of melody here and there, which we'd never heard before. And this would give Kerry's album an edge, or a bit of a kind of like, oh, now there's an interesting future. Oh, I haven't heard that before. I kind of like
Yeah,
what's going on.
Tom's been, all respect to Tom, he's just been doing the same thing for the last, at least 10 years. Like you could easily program an AI rhythm to deliver Tom Araya vocals. I
Yeah,
don't know
but my
why that is. I don't know if he's no longer invested, if he's singing Carrie's words over that music, there's only so much you can do. But
well,
Tom Araya 2014 was not Tom Araya 1985.
to your point there. Firstly, um, uh, what I was hoping for doesn't happen at
Yeah.
all. We get an album of very much a younger Tom, um, and to a point where the first time I listened to it, I was kind of like,
Yeah,
right,
and Carrie
I,
has said that he,
yeah,
on the demos, he would send guide vocals. He would tell him how to sing on. There's no question about that. He was saying, Carrie saying, do it this way. And I'm
yeah,
pretty fucking sure he never said that to Tom. And if he did,
yeah.
it was maybe 30 years ago.
But my hope
So,
is,
so like, yeah, like Mark, one of the great metal vocals, Mark. I mean, and
yeah,
God, he's aged well. Um, you take that guy and you have him sing the way the guitarist wants it sung. Um, Not the best results.
well, the thing is, there's a couple of things at play here. A, I hope that there is room to grow on the second album, and because this album will have been written like that, and maybe future albums won't be. We'll have to wait and see. Um, because that I hope for, but also the flip side of it is you're singing over Kerry King's riffs. How much fucking room is there here? I mean, like, when this bridge has been built a certain way forever, and it goes over the river fine. You want to fuck with it, you could end up in the river. So, yeah, you know, I've been building these bridges all this time, and so, and I also think maybe genuinely from a singer's point of view, if I'm in Mark's shoes, and you don't let's say you don't even get the ideas from Kerry, you hear the riffs and you go, all you can hear is Tom in your fucking head.
Yeah.
It's like, what would Tom do? It's one of those. Who the hell wants to hear like something expansive and different over Kerry King's riffs at this stage in the game? I guess maybe just me, maybe you. Um, uh, so, but and then it's grown on me. It really has grown on me. And I think it all works. And back to the word you used earlier, cohesive.
Yeah, I mean, you need harmony in an organization. If you can't be
Yeah,
two
just not in a
different
band.
kind of groups. Yeah.
Yeah, just not on that album. No harmony on this album at all. Okay, just brutality. That's
Yeah. So
that's
I
all we
mean, like
want.
I look at, to use a movie analogy, I look at I never blame actors for bad movies and even bad performances, because at some point the actor's doing something, somebody looks at it and goes, yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's bad. Okay, we'll go with this take. The
Oh,
director, the actors
yeah,
have made a lot of choices, and the director isn't necessarily showing us that. Look at
yes, yes,
Jennifer Lopez in Out of Sight. Stellar, amazing, stunning, captivating, dramatic, serious. I don't think she's done anything like that in the however many years since, nearly, more than 20 at this point.
yeah,
Is she a shitty actor? No. Steven Soderbergh told her do it this way or guided her that way, and he used certain
yeah.
takes.
Yeah.
Kerry King wanted it done one way, and Mark did it that way, and he exceeded expectations. And there's nothing wrong with his performance.
Nope.
He did what Kerry wanted, and then
Yeah.
some. He just, you got what you got.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's a great comparison with, like, the name director, that title. Yes, they are directing the performance of every actor, the journey of the story, the narrative, how it all works. And sometimes, yeah, it's like the Mark Hamill turning up for the second of the last Star Wars trilogy, and the director saying, "Right, you're basically gonna throw your lightsaber over there and go, it's all bollocks and all the rest of it." And Mark Hamill just turned around to him and said, "Well, I think you are 100% wrong, and you've made all the wrong choices at every stage. But my job is to deliver the vision you see, and I will give 100% to that."
Right. Right. So, like I said in my review of the album, I think the most recent episode of the show was just a special review of the album. I think Tom, looking back, what Kerry did on this album and at the old Slayer albums, I think you can give Tom an almost directorial credit. He wasn't editorial. I know I've said that in the past, but it wasn't Tom saying we're going to have this song this way. Tom didn't write most of the songs. He wrote some of the most acclaimed Grammy-winning songs. But Tom is almost like a director. Like, okay, you wrote that song. I'm going to sing it this way, or I'm going to shoot it this way. And Jeff, in retrospect, should have had a producer credit on every Slayer album because he was the one that
Mm.
said, "Do this, don't do that." No, that's bullshit. I'm walking. I'm not. You want to record Doors songs? I'm not doing that.
Yeah,
So, I mean, Jeff, in retrospect, was the guy that said, "Yes, no, I like it. I'm not doing that shit."
yeah, yeah. And that it was you've reminded me about my question for you about Jeff, and the poor reception of the last Jeff album, Diabolus and Musica, or Diabolus and Musica,
Which
as
turned
I
into a whole episode. Thank you for that.
yeah, yeah, that's okay, man. That's all right. We're now having the
Good question.
extended. We're having the extended episode of that now, which is um, ultimately it's something that's always fascinated me. Because it was just like there's such a drop off after that album, and that album was poorly received in the worst kind of way, like in the "you're not original, you're just trying to sound like other younger bands." I mean, it's like if you wanted to insult Jeff Hanneman, just say all the things people said about that album, and then his writing credits drop off a cliff. But by the same token, by the way, kids, the eventual DX Ferris Slayer expert uh, uh, answer is no, Howard. I don't think that's what happened. But I agreed with you, and and it was interesting to see the journey that you went on. And me, I like, someone asks a question, I'll respond to it, and then I'll listen to it, my answer later, and think, yeah, I'm not sure I got that right. Whereas, you took about a week to put like a really well constructed, actually, I think this together, and that gave me a kind of perspective that I was incapable of getting for myself. So, from a personal point of view, thank you very much.
Oh,
But
thank you. I
but
mean,
it's
that's what I try and do as a music writer. Like there are actual facts, there are actual quotes, there are numbers, there are statistics that you can use to look at the story instead of just going, "Yeah, I
yes,
like that. I don't like that." That's
yeah,
saying I like this, I don't like that, this rules, that doesn't rule. That's not journalism. And there's a
yeah.
time and a place for that, but that's not entirely what I do.
Yeah, no, it's entirely what I do. I just went like, "Hey, look, here's all the evidence you need." The last Jeff album, shit reviews. Then look, he never goes nearly banned the way he does after that. So clearly, that's all the evidence I need. I've arrived at my opinion.
Well, it's really, I mean, lately I've been looking at old videos from the 80s and contrasting them with, the 21st century, not just with Slayer, but Metallica. Only recently did I discovered the video of Metallica's first show with Jason that was in an LA club doing a
Mm.
surprise. Did you watch this video? You know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't. It was one of those
Oh,
things that I meant to watch and I didn't get around to.
it's stunning. It's Metallica, their first show with Jason, 1987. They opened for Metal Church, just surprise gig. It was a Metal Church show, and people walk in, and there's fucking Metallica with the new bassist that you've been hearing about and not seen yet, playing to a club. And it's one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life. It's amazing. And I was shocked, like, oh, I remember this is Metallica. Metallica used to be really exciting and good and awesome. Like, I forgot this. And I was just watching some of the Slayer 1988 Madison Square Garden concert where the crowd tore up all the seats and were throwing the cushions around. And it's bands were such a different thing in the 20th century, and their 21st century output, however you want to classify it, is, I think, inarguably a totally different thing. I mean, what
Oh,
Slayer are
yes.
doing on God Hates Us All is good, but it ain't like 1988.
Oh,
And
God, no.
Metallica, and even in the 90s, ain't like what they were doing in 1987 when they're playing a club in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, I just sometimes I need to remind myself, like, wow, there's a reason we're still talking about this shit. There's a reason why we're hotly debating it. Like,
Dude, the era that you're talking about made me so excited. You know, me with no musical skills whatsoever. I knew from being a schoolboy in the school choir at my primary school that I could sing, and you know, that's the only way I could be in a band. And when I discovered Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, and Slayer, then that that was like, well, changed my life, because here I am all these years later. You know, I love this music so much. I listening to it wasn't enough. I had to go and make it. I had to go and be able to walk in and walk around it and be in it and create it, because it just moved me so much. Listening was not going to get the job done. And here I am as a 54-year-old man, still in that same fucking band, and put together when I was 15 years old. And because of this era that you talk about, this era where it was just like, well, the greatest way I can describe it to anybody now is, imagine there's only one genre of metal and it's called heavy metal. Now imagine a second genre appearing and it's punky. That's the only way I can describe it, because most people can't even name the amount of genres in metal. Well, just imagine what it was like. What a fucking earth-shuddering thing happened when genre number two came along, you know?
yeah, and I mean, it was not entirely well received at the time. Yeah, I think I
God,
mentioned this
no.
on the show, but not in the book. Like seeing Metallica on the Master of Puppets tour open up for Ozzy, you know, I'm 14, whatever, down front, and there are a few Metallica fans, but mostly it's these old Ozzy Osbourne fans that just want to stand there and hear metal, and they don't want to hear this fast, loud shit. They want to hear Mr.
Yeah.
Crowley and they want to hear Crazy Train. Like Metallica, yeah, I mean, it was a watershed moment, but they were not universally beloved by the
God, no.
metal
Well,
community at the
the
time.
older kids who got me into metal, my sister's friends, and she was older than me, so her friends were my friends, but older than me, and they got me into metal. And then I discovered Metallica. So I'm now playing them Metallica, going, guys, check it out. And they're all going, nah, shit, no choruses. Nah, that's rubbish. And I was like, oh my God, but these guys were like people I looked up to who'd got
Yeah,
me into metal. And now I'm playing something that I know is fucking amazing,
sorry,
and they don't
friend.
get it.
Now is where we part ways.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now is when I thought they knew everything about music, and instantly they lost their mystique. Oh God, they know nothing. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
if
how
you
they
like
know.
this, how can you say you don't like that? I
Yeah,
don't get
yeah,
it.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
gone.
yeah, exactly. Because I'm coming at it from the other way, a slightly younger person with maybe, a bit more open-minded, whereas they're already entrenched. We know what metal is. That's not metal. It's too
Yeah.
fast. And that was the other debate when all this started happening with thrash as well. Like the faster a band plays, are they worse musicians or better musicians? Can they People used to say about thrash bands they can't play their instruments. And it's like turns out they could play them better.
Yeah.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Man.
Um,
So
well,
do
look,
you
mate,
think the show worked, man? Do you think that it do you think it did its thing?
I was just about. It's funny you should say that. I was just about to sum up. Um, yes, I do. I mean, without a doubt. Look, anybody who's listened to this knows that you know an incredible amount about Slayer. That you know, you're a journalist, a writer. There's a big difference to what most people read about music now to what you do. Um, and from that aspect, I think it's a fascinating listen because I think it's you. For a start, you did something that I think not many people are willing to do, and that's you went way out of your comfort zone. That's so props, as they say in your neck of the woods. Um, um, and I always respect anyone who's willing to go out of their comfort zone, but you also did it in your way, the way you did, and just listening to you talk about going on the treadmill for a bit and getting your voice ready and rehearsing the show, two or three times, and then delivering it. Um, uh, you know, I just think that's a stunning level of professionalism and commitment that personally I am totally incapable of.
Thank
So,
you.
so you know, fair fucks to you, mate. And you've ended up with, I think, it's like to go back to use your word again, a cohesive audiobook, something that, um, something that makes sense as episode by episode, but also I could imagine downloading the whole thing and listening to it in like chunks of sittings. I remember listening to one episode flying back from Cyprus. Um, and I remember where I was on the flight. We were going over a particular ocean, and you were talking about going to a club show of Slayer. I think it was on the South of Heaven tour, and your friend told you all about it, and you kind of relayed um, his experience and you chatting to him about it, and it's like that is frozen in my mind, like flying over that ocean and that story. It's like when I think of that story, I think of the flight, and when I think of the flight, I think of that story, and I think it's those things that don't really work as well in a book because you can inflect the passion in your voice, and that when you read a book, it's whatever's going on in your head, and everybody has that, their different washing machine, but you yeah, it's a really really brave and wonderful thing you've done, and I think anybody who's into Slayer should be subscribing.
Well, thank you. Like, how about the was I too impersonal in it? I mean, like part of what I did was like I don't bullshit on the show too much. The whole idea was maybe 2 minutes of introduction tops and just get in and not tell you about me and not get personal too much. And I think I did it on a few of the bonus episodes, but for the most part, like, hey, this is what we're talking about this week. Let's fucking hit it and go. Like,
You see, the thing is, there's some people will like the impersonal stuff, some people won't. Some people will like the personal stuff, some people won't. And what I learned from doing comedy is if I think this is good, then some other people will as well. So I'm fine with that because some people won't, but also those people may never like anything I do. So you know all you can do is use your own it's literally like you walk on stage to tell a joke that no one's ever heard before. I think it's funny. I'm going to tell it because if I think it's funny, I think there's enough me's out there that are going to laugh as well. Um, and that's just kind of like, and you know what, like 90% of the time, yeah, that's how it works. So it's just one of those. Do you know what? I am my own quality control, and that's what you have to do. And that is another part of your being out of your comfort zone as well. It's like you don't get to send episodes away to an editor, you know, and he comes back with notes. It's like, no, you got to do this shit yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I'm a big podcast fan. I love podcasts and I hate them, and I think a lot of them are horse shit. And even ones I like, I listen to them and they drive me crazy. I think it's a
Yeah, sorry
bait
about that,
and
mate.
No, you're good. You don't have ads. Podcast
Oh,
ads drive me fucking crazy.
yeah,
And it's a whole bait and switch. Like you say you're going to talk about Slayer, but then like there's 15 minutes of you like auditioning to be a late night talk show host or something. What are you doing? Like, shut up.
yeah,
You said we were going to talk to Phil Demo. Put Phil on the fucking line. I
yeah,
got to listen to you for 15 minutes, or I got to
yeah.
skip around and find it. Like
Three
I
minutes,
said, we're
three
going to
minutes of
talk about
adverts.
Slayer today. Here it is.
Yeah,
Um, I said we were going to talk about Slayer. Here's an ad for car insurance. Here's an ad for
yeah.
casinos. Like, what the fuck?
Which is also louder than the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
Which is just like that absolutely boils my brain. The word I actually right, the BBC over here, as you know, not allowed to have adverts, but every BBC podcast starts the same way. Before you listen to this BBC podcast, let me. I'm a producer in the podcast
You're too good
department.
at this.
Let me tell you about some of the episodes we've got about other things. Hey,
Yeah.
ooh,
If you're just joining us, it's a fucking podcast. We've been
yes.
listening for 50 minutes. What do you, if you're just joining us?
Yeah, no, but also it's this like before you listen to this podcast, not before, after. You want to talk to me about other shows, do it after the show I fucking downloaded to listen to. You know?
So I've tried not to do that bullshit. If nothing, I didn't
Yes.
do
And you
that.
do it.
I didn't want to waste your time. I didn't want to tell you about me and not Slayer. I say we're going to talk Slayer. That's what we do. And if that sounds interesting, please check it out.
And I can assure all of you folks, that it is interesting. Look, mate, thanks as always. This has been an absolute blast. Thank you.
I appreciate you, and it's been a long time now. So ongoing, compound, multiple, extreme gratitude.
It's my
Undisputed
pleasure.
gratitude, Howard.
Yeah,
Undisputed
yeah, I like
gratitude.
it. I like it. Also, well done. We got through a whole episode and we didn't talk about British TV once. Fucking get it.
Next time.